Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ. We are closing in on the MLB All-Star break, which means time is winding down to build a contender as well. With the trade deadline looming, it means teams will either be buyers or sellers as they all try to get prepped for the fall. As they try to get prepped for the Fall Classic, those decisions must be made by July 31st. Let's get to our expert here who has all the words and all the right things to say, our World Series champion in Jim Bowden. Jim, obviously there's going to be a lot of moving pieces as we get closer to that trade deadline there, but I want to talk about our top targets in pitching. So who are you looking at? We're going to start this thing in a wide umbrella here. Who are your top starting pitchers ahead of that trade deadline?
Yeah, so there's not a lot of sellers at this year's deadline, so the Miami Marlins are getting a lot of phone calls on two of their starting pitchers. Sandy Alcantara, who's not having a good year coming back from Tommy John. In fact, he's 4-8 with an ERA north of 7. But Edward Cabrera is getting just as many phone calls as Sandy. He's having a really good season, kind of a breakout year. In 15 starts, he's been able to put up an ERA of 3.33. The Pittsburgh Pirates have been shopping two of their starters, both expected to be traded. Mitch Keller and Andrew Haney. And then the Arizona Diamondbacks become a question mark. Right now, they're telling teams they want to buy, but most teams believe they'll sell by the time they get to July 30th. So everyone is keeping tabs on two of their starters, both of whom will be free agents at season's ends. That's right-hander Zach Gallen, who has an ERA of 5.13, but remember, started an all-star game a couple of years ago. And Merrill Kelly, who is really having a great year, 7 wins and a 3.41 ERA. So those are the 6 starting pitchers that I'm hearing that are getting the most activity, at least early on.
Jim, I can't help but notice as we were looking at that full screen with all of the names that one of those ERAs was not like the other, and that, of course, was Sandy Alcantara, who you mentioned is getting a lot of buzz. Look, we know what the potential is, right? He's a former Cy Young winner, but he's really struggled since coming back from Tommy John surgery. So when you see the numbers, when you've seen the performances, why are teams so interested in bringing him on?
Well, I think teams are looking at the stuff, which is very similar to the stuff he had when he won the Cy Young. What I mean by that is his average fastball velocity has been 97.4 miles an hour. His changeup is coming in at 90, the slider 88 to 90, and the curveball around 85 miles an hour. Those are consistent numbers that he was putting up when he won the Cy Young. So what is the difference between then and now? A couple of things. Number one, it's the command and control of his pitches. Number two, it's the pitch sequencing. So in terms of command and control, coming back from Tommy John, this would be normal. I think next year is when the command and the control kind of arrive. And so I think teams are looking at him saying, hey, he's healthy. His stuff is very close to what it was. The further he gets from the Tommy John surgery and this rehab, the better he's going to get. And so there are teams willing to make a run at him. Now, I don't think if the Marlins trade him, they're going to get 100% value of Alcantara because of the down year he's having. So perhaps they would have to accept 80 to 85% value in a trade. But because there's not a lot of starters out there, I don't think there's any question, Haley, he could get moved.
Just looking at his last start, it was a 6-5 loss on the 4th of July where he threw 4 strikeouts, but he also gave up 5 hits, 5 earned through 6 innings of work. So we're looking at the future when it comes to Sandy. But let's stay on the pitchers here, Jem, because we know some teams, to your point, need some starting pitcher help. So what teams do you have your eye on looking to bring in a new starter?
Yeah, there are 4 teams I'm being told that are in hot pursuit of the starting pitching market, and there's going to be more. But the 4 teams that I know of as of now, the Toronto Blue Jays, that is their #1 priority at the deadline. The New York Yankees have also prioritized third base. The Chicago Cubs are looking for another starter because of the injury to Justin Steele, and the New York Mets are looking for an opportunity there as well, although they may end up going to get a couple of relievers instead. But those are the 4 teams that I'm being told are really chasing the starting pitching market right now.
If you had to pick one, who needs one the most?
I'm going to go with the New York Mets. I just kind of feel like they have all the elements there, but I kind of feel like they're one starter away. Now, look, they're getting Sean Manaea off the injured list. They're getting Kodai Senga back. You know, maybe those 2 guys will answer the bell, and that's the answer, which would be great. I'm not sold on Frankie Montas Jr. I'd like to see the Mets get one arm because I think when I look at them and the Phillies, I picked the Phillies to win the division because of their starting rotation. But I think if the Mets went out and got a big starter, I think that could be the difference on who wins the division.
Just as important as the starters, though, Jim, are the finishers, right? And it seems like a lot of teams could use closers as well. So take us through some names that you have highlighted that you're keeping your eye on when it comes to relievers in the MLB.
Yeah, so we know the Pirates are shopping both David Bednar and Dennis Santana, and so they've had a lot of conversations with both the Phillies and the Mets regarding those two guys, and they're going to get moved. But I'm also hearing from GMs that if Boston sells, Aroldis Chapman is gone. And look, we know the last time he was traded at a deadline a couple of years ago in June, the Royals were able to get Cole Reagans from the Rangers. So I think if GM Craig Breslow with the Red Sox can get that kind of return, he'll move Chapman if they don't think they can make the playoffs. The other big name I'm hearing is Emmanuel Clase from the Guardians, and I'm hearing that he could even be traded before the All-Star week is over. So that's going to be one to follow because he's an impact closer. He's one of the best in the game, and they would get a huge return for him. Also, Felix Bautista of the Orioles, a lot of teams think they'll eventually sell, so that's one to watch. Same thing with Ryan Helsley with the St. Louis Cardinals. Some people think the A's may offer Mason Miller because there are teams that would like to turn him into a starter. And then, of course, Johan Duran, who throws 102 miles an hour for the Twins. So that's a lot of big names that could get moved at the deadline. Look, they all won't, but 2 or 3 of them definitely will.
Hey, you mentioned Emmanuel Clase's name in there. It is possible, to your point, that he could be heading in a different direction, but also Stephen Kwan potentially too. Could we see a world, Jim, where we see 2 of the best players on a Guardians team that needs some help move on at the trade deadline?
That's what I'm hearing, Haley. That's what other GMs are telling me. They're telling me that the Guardians are looking to reboot right now. And look, they're near the bottom in almost every offensive category, and they don't have a lot of power. They can't protect Jose Ramirez in the middle of the lineup. So I'm hearing if they can turn Clase into a middle-of-the-order power bat, if they could turn Kwan into a guy that can do more damage in the middle of the lineup, that's what they're looking to do. They'll also move outfielder Lane Thomas as well if it's needed. So they're going to be a fascinating team at the deadline. I've heard the Phillies connected a lot with Emmanuel Clase and Stephen Kwan for that matter. I've also heard the Mets involved in Emmanuel Clase. So he is a huge name that we'll all be keeping our eye on.
The Guardians currently sitting in 4th in the AL Central. They're sitting at 42 and 48. But to your point, the offense has been lacking. We'll have to see how it all goes there. We're going to tie a bow on the pitching chat, though, here, Jim. Give me some teams maybe looking to boost the bullpen and get some distance in some of these games before the deadline.
Yeah, the 4 teams that are all in on the bullpen. The New York Mets, they're not looking for 1, they're looking for 2. Chicago Cubs are looking for a reliever. Detroit wants a high-leveraged back of the bullpen kind of guy. They're kind of obsessed with it. I'll be surprised if Detroit doesn't get one. And that's also been the Philadelphia Phillies' priority. So I think when you look at those 4 teams, they are the most likely to land significant relief help. But let's be realistic. We see this every trade deadline. Every single contender wants to upgrade their bullpen. And we're going to see probably once again a record number of relievers dealt, especially when non-contenders can turn a reliever into an everyday young position player.
It's so much to keep your head on a swivel to pay attention to as all of these teams want to get to the Fall Classic. But as we know, only a couple can do so. Let's move on to the top position players on the trading block here, Jim. What do you got for us? Who you're looking at?
Yeah, so Jarren Duran, who has kind of lost left field because of the development of Roman Anthony and how good Wilyer Abreu is in right field and is being DHing a lot. Duran is being shopped by GM Craig Breslow with the Red Sox. The 2 teams that we keep hearing the most are the San Diego Padres and Philadelphia Phillies. I talked to A.J. Preller on Sunday. I had him on my SiriusXM radio show, and he made it very clear he's going to get 2 bats at this deadline. And Duran is one of the top goals. He would love to see an outfielder, Fernando Tatis Jr., Jackson Merrill, and Jarren Duran in left. That would be amazing. Other hitters, Josh Naylor and Eugenio Suarez of the Arizona Diamondbacks are 2 guys that every team would like right now. You've got Ryan O'Hearn. Both the Cincinnati Reds and Kansas City Royals would like to acquire him. In terms of Naylor, you've got both Seattle and Boston. In terms of Suarez, you've got Detroit and Milwaukee. Another name to think about is center fielder Cedric Mullins on his free agent year with the Orioles. Both the Phillies and the Mets have been connected with him. And how about Brian Reynolds of the Pittsburgh Pirates, Haley? Both the Royals and Padres feel like Brian Reynolds will be a really good fit in left field for them. So those are some of the bats really to pay attention to.
I'm glad you didn't mention my guy, Adolis Garcia. I saw his name on that list, but it makes me feel good that he's sticking around for a little bit since we didn't mention him there. But you did mention Duran, and obviously a little bit different than how we were looking at him last year. He was the he was the All-Star MVP, had a great season, and yet now we're thinking about him potentially leaving Boston. With what Boston has already done, of course, they parted ways with Rafael Devers earlier this year. Kind of a similar question as I asked you with the Guardians. Is this where we see them move on from another star in Boston?
Well, they're going to be an interesting team to watch. They are going to trade Duran, what I'm being told. I'm not sure I completely agree with it. I'm a Duran guy. They're also trying to extend Alex Bregman. I've heard if they don't extend Bregman, that they'll be open to moving him too. And you got teams like Detroit, Seattle, and Milwaukee that would have interest in him. Again, if they sell Aroldis Chapman, the closer's going to go. Boston's going to be an interesting team. They're playing a lot better. They have a chance of staying in the wild card race, but there's going to be a lot of pressure on Craig Breslow when he gets to the trade deadline on which direction he's going to go to. If he sells, he's going to have, as much to sell as any of the teams that sell, so he could really maximize the return. So it's going to be fascinating to see what he does at the deadline.
The Red Sox currently 6.5 games back from the Blue Jays at the top of the AL East, so they've got some work to do, and maybe we'll see what happens with Duran. I'm with you, though. I'd like to see him stay in Boston. Let's talk about the hot bats you got to have if you're going to make it to October, Jim. So as we wrap up our chat here, tell me some teams that could use some run support at the trade deadline.
Yeah, so what I'm being told, Haley, is the San Diego Padres, the Seattle Mariners, the Kansas City Royals, the Cleveland Guardians, and the Detroit Tigers are the teams that are most looking for a bat. Now, the Padres want 2 bats, one of which they hope will be a left fielder. That's a goal of them. Seattle Mariners want a first baseman or a third baseman. That's why their fit with Arizona is so good with Naylor or Suarez. The Kansas City Royals are looking for a left fielder. That's why they keep getting connected to Brian Reynolds of the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Guardians are just looking for bats. And the Yankees, look, their priority is starting pitching. But I'm told that since they moved Chisholm back to second and they're going to play Peraza at third, they would like to upgrade that position at third base, and we'll see if they're able to do that at the deadline. Ryan McMahon of the Colorado Rockies is a player they've liked in the past, and how great would Eugenio Suarez look at the hot corner with his 29 home runs if the Yankees could get him from Arizona?
And it would look pretty good, especially given all of the situations and who's going to win and how things have played out to this point. Jim, we appreciate the time and know you're going to stay on top of it all as you take a look here at the notable games happening in the show today.